Nothing great in the world was accomplished without passion. We learn from history that we do not learn from history. To be independent of public opinion is the first formal condition of achieving anything great. Genuine tragedies in the world are not conflicts between right and wrong. They are conflicts between two rights. What experience and history teaches us is that people and governments have never learned anything from history, or acted on principles deduced from it. Evil resides in the very gaze which perceives evil all around itself. Truth is found neither in the thesis nor the antithesis, but in an emergent synthesis which reconciles the two. Only one man ever understood me, and he didn't understand me. Education is the art of making man ethical. It is solely by risking life that freedom is obtained. The individual who has not staked his or her life may, no doubt, be recognized as a person, but he or she has not attained the truth of this recognition as an independent self-consciousness. The valor that struggles is better than the weakness that endures. This is love. I have my self-consciousness not in myself but in the other. I am satisfied and have peace with myself only in this other, and I am only because I have peace with myself. If I did not have it, then I would be a contradiction that falls to pieces. This other, because it likewise exists outside itself, has its self-consciousness only in me, and both the other and I are only this consciousness of being outside ourselves and of our identity. We are only this intuition, feeling, and knowledge of our unity. This is love, and without knowing that love is both a distinguishing and the sublation of this distinction, one speaks emptily of it. The bud disappears when the blossom breaks through, and we might say that the former is refuted by the latter. In the same way, when the fruit comes, the blossom may be explained to be a false form of the plant's existence, for the fruit appears as its true nature in place of the blossom. The ceaseless activity of their own inherent nature makes these stages moments of an organic unity, where they not merely do not contradict one another, but where one is as necessary as the other, and constitutes thereby the life of the whole. The owl of Minerva begins its flight only with the coming of the dusk. Too fair to worship, too divine to love. When liberty is mentioned, we must always be careful to observe whether it is not really the assertion of private interests which is thereby designated. The ignorant man is not free, because what confronts him is an alien world, something outside him and in the offing, on which he depends, without his having made this foreign world for himself, and therefore without being at home in it by himself as in something his own. The impulse of curiosity, the pressure for knowledge, from the lowest level up to the highest rung of philosophical insight, arises only from the struggle to cancel this situation of unfreedom and to make the world one's own in one's ideas and thought. People who are too fastidious towards the finite never reach actuality, but linger in abstraction, and their light dies away. Once the state has been founded, there can no longer be any heroes. They come on the scene only in uncivilized conditions. An idea is always a generalization, and generalization is a property of thinking. To generalize means to think. America is therefore the land of the future, where, In the ages that lie before us, the burden of the world's history shall reveal itself. History is not the soil in which happiness grows. The periods of happiness in it are the blank pages of history. If we go on to cast a look at the fate of world historical personalities, we shall find it to have been no happy one. They attained no calm enjoyment, their whole life was labor and trouble, their whole nature was nothing but their master passion. When their object is attained they fall off like empty hulls from the kernel. They die early, like Alexander, they are murdered, like Caesar, transported to St. Helena, like Napoleon. We may affirm absolutely that nothing great in the world has been accomplished without passion. World history is a court of judgment. The state of man's mind, or the elementary phase of mind which he so far possesses, conforms precisely to the state of the world as he so far views it. The length of the journey has to be borne with, for every moment is necessary. If we are in a general way permitted to regard human activity in the realm of the beautiful as a liberation of the soul, as a release from constraint and restriction, in short to consider that art does actually alleviate the most overpowering and tragic catastrophes by means of the creations it offers to our contemplation and enjoyment, it is the art of music which conducts us to the final summit of that ascent to freedom. History in general is therefore the development of spirit in time, as nature is the development of the idea is space. Beauty and art, no doubt, pervade all business of life like a kindly genius, and form the bright adornment of all our surroundings, both mental and material, soothing the sadness of our condition and the embarrassments of real life, killing time in entertaining fashion, and where there's nothing to be achieved, occupying the place of what is vicious, better, at any rate, than vice. Everybody allows that to know any other science you must have first studied it, and that you can only claim to express a judgment upon it in virtue of such knowledge. Everybody allows that to make a shoe you must have learned and practiced the craft of the shoemaker, though every man has a model in his own foot, and possesses in his hands the natural endowments for the operations required. For philosophy alone, it seems to be imagined, such study, care, and application are not in the least requisite. What is reasonable is real, that which is real is reasonable. Reading the morning newspaper is the realist's morning prayer. One orients one's attitude toward the world either by God or by what the world is. The former gives as much security as the latter, in that one knows how one stands. The anti-human, the merely animal, consists in staying within the sphere of feeling, and being able to communicate only at that level. It is manifest that behind the so-called curtain which is supposed to conceal the inner world, there is nothing to be seen unless we go behind it ourselves, as much in order that we may see, as that there may be something behind there which can be seen. No man is a hero to his valet. This is not because the hero is not a hero, but because the valet is a valet. But even regarding history as the slaughter bench at which the happiness of peoples, the wisdom of states, and the virtue of individuals have been victimized, the question involuntarily arises, to what principle, to what final aim these enormous sacrifices have been offered? We must have a new mythology, but it must place itself at the service of ideas. It must become a mythology of reason. Mythology must become philosophical, so that the people may become rational, and philosophy must become mythological, so that philosophers may become sensible. If we do not give ideas a form that is aesthetic, i.e., mythological, they will hold no interest for people. Propounding peace and love without practical or institutional engagement is delusion, not virtue. When we look at the world rationally, the world looks rationally back. War is progress, peace is stagnation. When a father inquired about the best method of educating his son in ethical conduct, a Pythagorean replied, "Make him a citizen of a state with good laws." But the life of spirit is not the life that shrinks from death and keeps itself untouched by devastation, but rather the life that endures it and maintains itself in it. It wins its truth only when, in utter dismemberment, it finds itself. Spirit is this power only by looking the negative in the face, and tarrying with it. This tarrying with the negative is the magical power that converts it into being. This power is identical with what we earlier called the subject. The one who merely flees is not yet free. In fleeing he is still conditioned by the from which he flees. Every consciousness pursues the death of the other. By nature man is not what he ought to be, only through a transforming process does he arrive at truth. We stand at the gates of an important epoch, a time of ferment, when spirit moves forward in a leap, transcends its previous shape and takes on a new one. A new phase of the spirit is preparing itself. Philosophy especially has to welcome its appearance and acknowledge it, while others, who oppose it impotently, cling the past. Uneducated people delight in argument and fault-finding, for it is easy to find fault, but difficult to recognize the good and its inner necessity. I saw the emperor, this world soul, riding out of the city on reconnaissance. It is indeed a wonderful sensation to see such an individual, who, concentrated here at a single point, astride a horse, reaches out over the world and masters it. Thinking is, indeed, essentially the negation of that which is before us. The vanity of the contents of individual experience is scrutable as an inessential trapping drawn into a matter by vested interests, since it is at the same time the vanity of the self that knows itself to be vain. Wickedness also resides in the gaze that perceives itself as innocent and surrounded by wickedness. The bud disappears in the bursting forth of the blossom, and one might say that the former is refuted by the latter. Similarly, when the fruit appears, the blossom is shown up in its turn as a false manifestation of the plant, and the fruit now emerges as the truth of it instead. It is easier to discover a deficiency in individuals, in states, and in providence, than to see their real import and value. Art is the sensuous presentation of ideas,